Have you ever seen some guy on TV or YouTube when they're playing 10 ball and they're making the game look really easy? To them, it's not really much of an effort. They just fire the ball in and the cue ball pretty much goes where they want it to go. And even when they're playing 8 ball, they just run around the table, and to them, everything is easy. And it really doesn't matter if they're jumping at balls or cutting balls in or even kicking at balls. To them, the game has become easy. Now, do these guys know something you don't know? Well, the truth is they do. They probably know a lot you don't know. And that's what this video is all about. So what separates this video from all the other videos out there is that this video has one goal in mind, and that's to make the game easy for you. And I'm going to show you a lot of secrets that are really going to supercharge your game. This video is all about cue ball control, teaching you an easier way to put that cue ball anywhere you want. We're first going to go through the fundamentals of the game, and not just stroke fundamentals, but the fundamentals of position play. These are the building blocks to building a powerful game. And when most players learn the game of pool, this is information they were never given. And without a thorough understanding of position fundamentals, you'll never reach a high level in pool. I'm not only going to show you an easier way to move the cue ball around the table, but we're going to be doing it without left or right spin. By the time you're done with this section, you're going to have greater control of the cue ball with a lot less effort. The game will start to become easier for you. We're then going to get into half table pattern play, running balls in order using only half a table and no left or right spin. These drills are all about using the angles to move the cue ball around the table with minimal effort. We first start with 3 balls, then we're going to progress to 5 ball patterns. Then we're going to move on to full table pattern play. And by this time your ability to see angles, plan your patterns, and control the cue ball is going to skyrocket. Next, we're going to recreate runouts by the top players in the world. We're going to break down each shot one by one and explain why they chose the pattern they did. I'll show you what English they used and even demonstrate scenarios if they had gotten out of line. This is a great section to study if you've ever wondered why a top player chose the pattern they did. And throughout the video, we're going to have a lot of exciting shots that you're just going to love. For instance, I'm going to show you a technique for cutting balls in backwards. And these are cut shots you would never even think about cutting. I'll show you an easier way to pocket an object ball when it's right next to the cue ball. I'll show you a trick for banking a ball into a pocket that's blocked by other balls. And believe it or not, the trick is to shoot easy. I'm going to show you a mistake that almost everyone makes when they jump balls. I'm also going to show you an easier way to aim your jumps. This video is jam-packed full of great shots, tips, and lessons, all designed to get you to that next level. One of the main reasons people struggle in pool is because when they were first learning the game, they didn't spend much time working on their stance or their stroke. Instead, they got right into pocketing balls, and that became their main focus. And it's in this early stage where bad habits are formed and become a permanent part of the player's game. And then the player goes from pocketing balls to playing position using left and right spin. The problem with this is that they never learned the fundamentals of position play, how the cue ball moves off object balls and rails without spin. And because of this, they were never able to consistently control the cue ball. This, combined with any issues that may be in their stroke fundamentals, have limited their game, making it very difficult, if not impossible, to reach a higher level in pool. Without a thorough understanding of how the cue ball moves off object balls and rails, the player's cue ball control will always be inconsistent. And if you can't control the cue ball without spin, you're never going to be able to control the cue ball with spin. And that's what much of this video is all about, learning how to run the table in 8 ball and 9 ball without using left and right spin. And once you start developing a feel for controlling the cue ball without spin, when you do start using spin again, you're going to have a better idea of exactly how much spin you need, if any. You're going to start putting that cue ball wherever you want since you now have a deeper understanding of position fundamentals. And when I travel the country training students for my 14 days episodes, I can usually spot their problems within the first rack. They usually have a couple stroke issues that need to be fixed, but the main issue is their lack of understanding of position play. Playing improper angles along with overspinning the cue ball are issues that almost all of my students share. So the first thing I do is I take these players back to the fundamentals, the same fundamentals they probably skipped when they were first learning the game. So I have them do stroke drills, ball pocketing drills, and center ball positioning. And in order for these players to ever reach a high level in pool, they have to develop a strong foundation for their game. And for many of my students who have struggled for years, the transformation to becoming a stronger player happens very quickly, sometimes within a few days. These are players who had the capability and knowledge to play at a much higher level, but they had several limitations in their game. Once we remove these limitations, they can now reach a much higher level in pool. So in this video, we're going to cover the same training that my students go through. First we'll cover stroke fundamentals, then position fundamentals, then finally we're going to go through full table pattern play using left and right spin. As I explained in Secrets 2, the stance is created around the shooting line, and the shooting line is created using the ghost ball and the cue ball. And when we talk about the ghost ball, we're referring to an imaginary ball location that represents where the cue ball needs to be to pocket the object ball. For instance, let's say I want to pocket the one ball on the side. Imagine a line going through the center of the pocket opening, through the center of the one ball. So for me to pocket the one ball, the cue ball needs to end up here when it contacts the object ball. So if I can visualize this ghost ball on each shot, I can then imagine a line going through the center of the ghost ball through the center of the cue ball. This is the line that I use to build my stance on every shot. For instance, in this shot, if I wanted to pocket the 9 in the corner, I would have to strike the 9 here with the cue ball. So this now becomes our ghost ball. The shooting line runs through the center of this ghost ball through the center of the cue ball. In this shot, the cue ball will strike the object ball here to pocket it in the corner. So the center of the ghost ball to the center of the cue ball is the shooting line. In another example, the cue ball will strike the object ball here to pocket it in the side. So the center of this ghost ball through the center of the cue ball is our shooting line. Now let's create the stance around the shooting line. In this example, the object ball and cue ball are straight into the corner pocket. And when both balls are straight in like this, you don't need to visualize the ghost ball. You can now just create the shooting line from the center of the object ball through the center of the cue ball. We then visualize this line as it extends past the table. And for the purposes of this video, I'm going to place the shooting line on the floor so you can see how I step into the shot. And we begin by placing our back foot on this shooting line, either at a slight angle or at an angle closer to 90 degrees. Turning our foot like this helps provide a bit more stability. Next, we step into the shot with our other foot. The foot will be parallel with the shooting line or slightly turned in. Our hips move out of the way to create more clearance for our stroke. And some players prefer locking their back leg and slightly bending their front leg, while other players like to slightly bend both legs. Players who are taller or who tend to play at a faster pace prefer bending both knees slightly. So here are a few issues to watch out for when creating your stance. Here I see the shooting line and I begin creating my stance, but you can see that when I place my back foot on the shooting line, it's too far back. And the reason this happened is because I started creating my stance too far away from the table. So if I move in a little bit closer and recreate my stance, everything now is more balanced. Another issue that people have is that they face away from the shot. Here my right foot is in the proper placement, but my left foot is facing away from the shot. I'm actually facing about 90 degrees away from the shot, which may cause a bit of instability. So this time, instead of my front foot facing away from the shot, I step into the shot with my left foot more parallel to the shooting line. In this example, my right foot has crossed the shooting line by about a foot. Now when I get down into the shooting stance, my stroke is extremely close to my body, which may interfere with the stroking motion. So this time I reposition my back foot more on the shooting line. And as I get into my shooting stance, you can now see that I have plenty of clearance. And as I get into shooting position, the top part of my stroke arm should be on the shooting line. Here you can see the top part of my arm isn't quite on the shooting line. So I'll reposition myself, and this time when I get down, I try to make sure my arm is on the shooting line. So now you can see how important it is to visualize the shooting line. Your stance will always be built around this line for every shot. And the better you get at this, the more accurate you're going to be in pocketing balls. Much of the aiming process is done before the player even gets down on the table. In this example, the player isn't aware of the shooting line when he builds his stance. So now he has to twist his body to place the cue stick on the line, which may cause his stance to become unstable. Now, this time when he approaches the table, he sees the shooting line and builds his stance around the line. Now when he bends over, his cue stick naturally drops into place. Now as the player gets into shooting position, their forearm should be relaxed and hanging naturally below their elbow as demonstrated here. Once the forearm starts moving away from this line, either to the inside or outside, it becomes more challenging to keep the stick on a straight path. It's important that when building the stance, you let your body do what it naturally wants to do. And this applies not only to the forearm, but also to the grip. Here, you can see that my grip is also relaxed. The cue sits on the fingers and the thumb sits to the side of the grip, holding the cue in place. You never want to put the thumb on top of the cue. You always want it off to the side to hold the cue in place. Here, the grip is turned inward, and here the grip is turned outward. If you just hang your hand naturally below your forearm without the pull cue, you'll see that your hand will naturally hang correctly, like this. Now try to keep the same relaxed position as you hold the pull cue. The thumb should point downward through the stroking motion. If you finish your stroke and your thumb is pointing toward your body, that means that you turned your wrist. Try to keep your thumb in the same position throughout the stroke. The goal for the grip is to remove any unnecessary tension. You really just want to feel the weight of the stick as you hold it. And the biggest mistake most players make is holding the cue way too tightly. The grip pressure should come from the front part of the grip hand. The back fingers apply very little if any pressure on the cue stick. And some players will remove their back 1 or 2 fingers completely, off the pull cue. The grip pressure should remain the same throughout the stroking motion. And remember, not everyone is going to have perfect fundamentals, but the closer you can get to proper fundamentals, the faster you're going to improve. If you're one of those players whose forearm is turned or your arm isn't lined up properly, you can still get to a high level. You're just going to need to put in more time on the table than someone whose fundamentals don't have these issues. Next, we're going to focus in on the actual stroking motion and some issues players may run into. Now, as the player is down on the shot and puts his tip up to the cue ball, they should relax their grip hand and slide it below their elbow. Here, the tip is at the cue ball, but my grip hand is too far back in the cue stick, which may restrict my backstroke. In this example, my grip hand is too far forward. By keeping the grip hand relaxed, we can let it slide naturally below my elbow. The backstroke should be straight back with a nice easy tempo. And whether you're shooting a